Once upon a time, as the golden sun blazed, it was a world of balance, where each creature knew its place. And at the center of it all, ruling the land with an iron grip, was Crocodile. Before he became the creature that slithered through the rivers and lurked beneath the waters, Crocodile was a mighty beast of the land. His skin was thick and rough like the bark of an ancient baobab tree. His powerful limbs carried him with ease, and his jaws, oh his jaws, could crush bones as if they were nothing more than dry twigs. The animals of the land feared him, for no hunter could match his strength. He could outrun the antelope, outmatch the leopard, and even lions dared not challenge him. Crocodile basked in the knowledge of his power, knowing that no beast could oppose him. Yet, despite his dominance, there was something that festered in his heart like a thorn buried deep beneath his scales: jealousy. It began as a whisper in his mind, a small irritation, but soon it grew, swelling like a storm on the horizon. Every day, he watched the fish dart freely through the rivers, their bodies gliding effortlessly beneath the cool, rippling surface. They moved without effort, without struggle, always just beyond his reach. No beast could challenge them in their domain, not even Crocodile, the great king of the land. And that infuriated him. Why should they live so easily while I must chase, stalk, and fight for my meals? Crocodile grumbled as he lay beneath the shade of an acacia tree one afternoon. His yellow eyes narrowed as he gazed at the river, watching the fish leap and play, their shimmering bodies catching the sunlight. Beside him, an old tortoise, slow and wise, munched lazily on a fallen fruit. He had lived many years, seen the rise and fall of many creatures, and understood the ways of the world better than most. "You seem troubled, Crocodile," Tortoise said in his slow, measured voice. "What burdens your heart on such a fine day?" Crocodile let out a low growl. "Look at them," he said, nodding toward the fish. "They do not toil. They do not fight for their food. The river feeds them, carries them. They have no worries, no struggles. And yet I, the strongest of all creatures, must labor to survive." Tortoise blinked his ancient eyes. "You are mighty, Crocodile, but the river is not your home. The fish belong to it, just as you belong to the land." Crocodile scoffed. "Why should I accept such a fate? Why should I not rule the land and the water?" His voice rumbled with rising anger. "I should not be bound to the dry earth while those little creatures mock me with their freedom." Tortoise sighed. He had seen such arrogance before, in many creatures who sought more than what was theirs. "Beware of pride, Crocodile," he warned. "The river is not something to be conquered. It is old, older than you, older than me. And it belongs to the river god." Crocodile snorted. "The river god? A spirit that hides beneath the waves, unseen. What power can he have that I do not?" Tortoise did not answer. He simply shook his head and continued chewing his fruit, as if he already knew where Crocodile's arrogance would lead. That night, as the moon cast silver light over the savannah, Crocodile lay awake, his jealousy twisting in his belly like a snake. He could not stand the thought that the fish lived without fear, that they thrived in a world beyond his grasp. No, he would not accept it. He would not be confined to the land while others lived freely in the water. A decision hardened in his mind like stone. The next morning, Crocodile made his way to the riverbank, his heavy steps sinking into the damp earth. He raised his great head, his voice echoing over the waters. "River god, I summon you." The wind seemed to hush, the trees standing still as if holding their breath. The river, once calm, began to ripple, as though something ancient stirred beneath the surface. A deep, rumbling voice rose from the waters. It was not loud, but it carried the weight of centuries. "Who calls upon me?" Crocodile lifted his chin proudly. "I am Crocodile, king of the land. I have come to challenge you." Silence fell over the river. Then slowly, the water at the center of the river swirled and churned, rising into a towering wave. From its depths emerged the river god, a magnificent being of shifting water and shimmering light, his form ever-changing like the currents of the river itself. His eyes glowed with the wisdom of ages, and his presence made even the trees tremble. "You dare challenge me?" the river god asked, his voice both calm and commanding. "Why?" Crocodile's tail slapped against the ground. "Because I will not be limited to the land. I am stronger than any beast, and I will prove it. I will defeat you and take the river for myself." The river god gazed at Crocodile for a long moment. Then a sad, knowing smile formed in the shifting waves of his face. "You are blinded by your own pride," he said. "You do not understand the power you challenge. But very well, Crocodile. If battle is what you seek, then battle you shall have." The waters around the river god surged, waves crashing against the banks, shaking the earth beneath Crocodile's feet. The air grew thick with the scent of rain and rushing currents. The animals of the savannah gathered at a distance, whispering amongst themselves, their eyes wide with fear and awe. Tortoise, watching from the safety of a rocky hill, sighed. "Foolish Crocodile," he murmured. "You do not know what you have done." Crocodile, however, did not hesitate. He bared his deadly teeth, his muscles coiling with anticipation. The thrill of the fight burned through his veins, filling him with confidence. The river god lifted his hands, the water rising with him. "Then let the battle begin." And with that, the river exploded in a fury of waves, and Crocodile charged headfirst into his greatest fight yet. The air crackled with tension as Crocodile lunged forward, his massive claws sinking into the damp earth as he charged into the river. His powerful legs propelled him into the water, his heavy body cutting through the surface with a force that sent waves crashing onto the banks. The river god stood unmoved, his form shifting like liquid, watching with eyes filled with ancient wisdom. A mighty roar tore from Crocodile's throat as he snapped his jaws, aiming to seize the river god in his crushing grip. But before his teeth could meet their mark, the river god dissolved into mist, vanishing like morning dew beneath the sun. Crocodile's powerful jaws clamped down on empty air, and before he could react, the river itself roared to life. A towering wave surged forward, striking Crocodile with the force of a raging bull. He was thrown backward, his body tumbling beneath the surface, the currents dragging him deeper into the river's depths. He thrashed wildly, his claws clawing at the water as though it were solid ground, but the river did not yield to him. "You are stubborn, Crocodile," the river god's voice echoed through the water, surrounding him from all sides. "But strength alone will not win this battle." Crocodile growled, shaking off the disorientation as he found his footing on the riverbed. With a powerful kick, he propelled himself forward, his eyes gleaming with fury. He had spent his whole life ruling the land, defeating every challenger that dared to cross him. He would not be humiliated by a spirit of the water. With newfound determination, he swam with surprising speed, his claws slicing through the currents. He would strike from below, where the river god would least expect it. He sank deeper, his yellow eyes narrowing as he scanned the swirling waters for his foe. And then there, a shifting shadow in the water, moving fluidly like a living current. Crocodile bared his teeth and lunged. His massive jaws clamped down, closing around the swirling form of the river god. He could feel the liquid press against his teeth, but something was wrong. There was no solid body to crush, no flesh to sink his teeth into. Instead, the water seemed to slip through the gaps in his jaws like grains of sand through open fingers. A deep chuckle rumbled through the river. You cannot bite the currents, Crocodile. You cannot break the tide. Before Crocodile could react, the water around him came alive. Thick tendrils of liquid wrapped around his limbs, dragging him deeper into the abyss. The weight of the river pressed against him, suffocating, crushing. He thrashed, fighting with all his might, but the harder he struggled, the stronger the river's grip became. You wish to rule the river, Crocodile. The river god's voice was calm, almost sorrowful. But you do not understand the river. You do not respect it. Crocodile's lungs burned as he fought against the suffocating embrace of the water. He could feel his strength waning, his once unshakable power being swallowed by the force of the river. And then, just as his vision began to darken, the river god released him. Crocodile shot upward, breaking through the surface with a gasping roar. He dragged himself onto the muddy bank, coughing and heaving, his body trembling from the effort. He had never known such helplessness before. He, who had been the ruler of the land, had been reduced to nothing more than a struggling beast in the water. The river god rose from the water, his form looming above Crocodile like a towering storm cloud. You are powerful, Crocodile, he said. But you are blinded by your own arrogance. You thought you could take the river by force, but the river is not something to be conquered. It is something to be understood. Crocodile's eyes, filled with fury and humiliation, glared up at the river god. Then fight me on land, he bellowed, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. Meet me where I am strongest. The river god regarded him for a long moment. Then, with a slow shake of his head, he said, You still do not understand. With those words, the river surged once more. A powerful current wrapped around Crocodile's legs, dragging him back toward the water. He roared in protest, claws digging into the mud, but the river's pull was unyielding. You wish to live in the river, the river god said. Then live in it you shall. The moment those words were spoken, a searing pain shot through Crocodile's body. He let out a deafening scream as his limbs twisted and reshaped, his once mighty legs shrinking and his tail growing longer, heavier. His lungs burned as they adapted to this new existence, his body reshaping to move not upon the land, but within the river's depths. His heart pounded as the realization hit him. He had been cursed. When the pain finally subsided, Crocodile lay still, panting heavily. He no longer felt the steady ground beneath him. His limbs, once built for running, now felt awkward on land, better suited for pushing through water. His thick scales, once rough like stone, now glistened with the dampness of the river. He had been transformed. The river god's voice, soft yet firm, carried through the air. You will never again rule the land, Crocodile. You will live in the river as you wished, but you will never be truly free. The water will be your home, but it will also be your prison. And when you step upon the land, you will do so in shame, for you will never belong there again. Crocodile let out a low, guttural growl. He wanted to protest, to fight, but deep down he knew the battle was over. The river god had won. The river calmed once more, the storm of battle fading into stillness. The river god's form shimmered before slowly dissolving back into the water, disappearing as though he had never been there at all. Crocodile lay at the river's edge, staring at his reflection in the water. He no longer recognized himself. He had once been a king of the land, but now he was something else, something that did not truly belong to either world. From the safety of the trees, Tortoise watched, shaking his head. "Pride has ruined many, Crocodile," he murmured. "And now it has ruined you too." Crocodile slowly slipped into the water, his long tail cutting through the surface as he disappeared beneath the waves. For the first time in his life, he did not feel powerful. He felt lost. Crocodile drifted in the murky depths of the river, his body heavy with exhaustion. The battle was over, but the war within him raged on. His limbs no longer felt like his own, his once powerful legs now awkward and sluggish on land. He felt the weight of his defeat pressing down on him, heavier than the river itself. The realization that he had lost everything settled deep in his bones. The land, once his domain, had rejected him. The river, which he had so arrogantly sought to conquer, had become his prison. The river god had cursed him, stripping him of his former glory and leaving him trapped in a body that did not feel like his own. For a long time he did not move. He lay submerged beneath the water, his yellow eyes barely peeking above the surface. The river was quiet now, its current steady, as though it had already forgotten the battle that had taken place. But Crocodile could not forget. Tortoise, who had watched the entire ordeal from the safety of the trees, made his way to the water's edge. He peered down at Crocodile with a knowing look. "So, mighty Crocodile," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "What will you do now?" Crocodile did not answer. He only stared at his own reflection, watching how the ripples distorted his face. Tortoise sighed. "You let your pride lead you to ruin. You were never meant for the river, yet you wished to rule it. And now, you are bound to it forever." Crocodile growled, his eyes flashing with anger. "I am still strong," he said, though the words felt hollow in his throat. "I am still a ruler." Tortoise shook his head. "A ruler of what? The land no longer belongs to you. The river does not welcome you. You have no kingdom, Crocodile. Only this curse." The words stung more than Crocodile cared to admit. He had always prided himself on being the most powerful, the most feared. Now he was neither. Days passed, and Crocodile remained in the water, unwilling to leave. Hunger gnawed at his belly, but the land, once so full of easy prey, was no longer his to roam. The moment he crawled onto the shore, his body felt sluggish, his limbs clumsy and weak. The land rejected him, just as the river god had decreed. The animals who once feared him now watched from a distance, murmuring amongst themselves. They had seen his defeat. They had seen his fall. And though they still respected his strength, they no longer trembled at the sight of him. Crocodile hated it. Determined not to waste away in his misery, he began to adapt. He watched the fish, observing how they moved, how they caught their food. He studied the currents, learning where they carried the most prey. If he could no longer rule by brute force, then he would rule through patience. Slowly he learned the ways of the water. He discovered how to remain completely still, his rough, scaled back blending seamlessly with the river's surface. He mastered the art of ambush, waiting for animals to come close before striking with lightning speed. Though he could no longer chase his prey across the land, he found a new way to hunt, by lurking, by waiting, by using the river itself as his ally. But the curse never let him forget. Every time he tried to bask on the riverbank as he once had, the weight of his body dragged him down, making it difficult to move. Every step on dry land was a reminder of what he had lost, of the home that no longer welcomed him. His once mighty roar had changed too. No longer was it the deep, earth-shaking sound that had once sent animals fleeing. Now it was guttural, rough, almost mournful, a sound that carried through the night, echoing over the water. The other animals, hearing it, whispered amongst themselves. "That is the sound of regret," they said. "The sound of a king who lost everything." Crocodile did not care for their whispers. He had no choice but to accept his fate. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Tortoise returned to the riverbank. He found Crocodile resting in the shallows, only his eyes and nostrils visible above the surface. "You have changed," Tortoise said. Crocodile snorted. "I had no choice." Tortoise nodded. "Change is painful, but it is also a lesson. You wanted power, but power is not the same as wisdom. If you had listened, if you had respected the river, perhaps things would have been different." Crocodile closed his eyes. He did not need Tortoise to tell him that. He already knew. But some lessons came too late. Tortoise sighed. "Still, you are not without strength. You have found a way to survive. And that is more than many can say." Crocodile said nothing. Tortoise took a step closer. "Do you regret it?" Crocodile's eyes opened slowly. He looked at his old friend, the one who had tried to warn him, and for a moment he considered lying. But in the end he only said, "Regret does not change fate." Tortoise nodded, accepting the answer. "Then may you learn to live with it." With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the trees. Crocodile watched him go, then turned his gaze to the water. He no longer belonged to the land. He no longer had a kingdom. But he had the river, and though it was his curse, it was also his home now. With a slow, deliberate movement, he slid beneath the surface, his body vanishing into the depths. And from that day forward, the crocodile remained bound to the water, forever a creature of two worlds, belonging fully to neither. Even today, crocodiles live in water but must come onto land to bask, as if remembering their lost kingdom. But sometimes on quiet nights when the moon hung low over the river, his deep, sorrowful roar would echo across the land, a reminder of a king who had lost everything. So, let not pride drive you to challenge forces greater than yourself, lest you lose what you were meant to be.